In the shallow waters near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas lies a mysterious underwater formation that has puzzled explorers, divers and researchers for decades. Known as the Bimini Road, it stretches over half a mile, made of huge, flat, rectangular limestone blocks that seem carefully aligned. To some, it's a natural geological feature, but to others, it's a remnant of a lost civilization, perhaps even Atlantis. The discovery was made in 1968 by divers Joseph Mason Valentine, Jacques Mayol, and Robert Angove. They were stunned to see what looked like an ancient stone road beneath the sea at a depth of about 18 feet. These massive stones, some as long as 13 feet, form a linear path that curves gently, resembling a paved walkway or breakwater. What's more, some stones seem to sit on top of others, hinting at deliberate construction. Soon after the discovery, theories exploded. One of the most sensational claims came from believers in the writings of Edgar Cayce, a mystic who had prophesied that evidence of Atlantis would rise in the area around Bimini in 1968 or 1969. The timing seemed uncanny. Was the Bimini Road proof of an ancient advanced society that vanished beneath the waves? Mainstream scientists were skeptical. Geologists analysed the formation and argued that the blocks were natural limestone formed by the erosion and fracturing of beach rock. According to this view, the stones broke apart in straight lines due to natural processes, forming a pattern that only looks man-made. Tectonic activity and underwater erosion could explain the positioning, but the mystery didn't end there. Supporters of the artificial theory point out that some blocks appear shaped or fitted. They note sharp angles, consistent thicknesses, and formations that seem unlikely in a purely natural context. Some blocks even rest on smaller stones, as if set there intentionally. Divers have reported tool marks or right angles, features they argue nature wouldn't produce so neatly. What makes this even more intriguing is the location. The Bahamas sit atop the submerged Bahama Banks, which were once dry land during the last ice age when sea levels were lower. If a civilization had existed there over 10,000 years ago, rising waters could have swallowed their settlements, just as myths describe. Could the Bimini Road be a preserved trace of that lost world? Other mysterious sites in the region add fuel to the fire. Sonar scans around Bimini and Andros Islands have revealed more possible structures beneath the sand: grids, circles and walls. While most remain unexplored or inconclusive, they raise a tantalizing question. Was this part of a larger complex? Some researchers, like Dr. Greg Little, argue that the site shows intentional engineering, with patterns consistent with docks or piers. His team believes it could be part of an ancient seaport. Others suggest it may be a ceremonial causeway or boundary marker. What purpose it served, if it was man-made at all, remains up for debate. Even the US Navy once got involved. In the 1970s, underwater research teams visited Bimini for various projects, and rumours spread that classified findings were made. Some conspiracy theorists claim data was hidden from the public to avoid rewriting history. Despite decades of dives and debates, no tools, artifacts or writing have been discovered at the site, nothing that definitively proves human craftsmanship. Yet the mystery persists because the formation refuses to fit neatly into either category. It's too regular to be ignored as a coincidence, but too sparse to confirm as a ruin. The allure of the Bimini Road lies not just in its shape, but in the story it tells, or rather, the story it withholds. It invites us to question how much we really know about our planet's past. Could there have been civilizations predating our accepted history? Did they leave traces now buried beneath rising seas? For every skeptic citing erosion and geology, there's a dreamer imagining sunken cities and forgotten empires. In that tension lies the true power of the Bimini Road. It doesn't give us answers. It gives us questions, and those questions keep us looking down into the ocean's depths, wondering what still waits to be discovered. Whether a product of nature or a relic of ancient hands, the Bimini Road stands as a symbol of curiosity. It bridges the line between myth and science, between what we think we know and what we dare to believe. And as long as it lies beneath the waves, silently challenging our assumptions, the mystery remains alive. In 1929, a strange discovery was made inside the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace. It was a fragment of a map, drawn on gazelle skin, and unlike anything scholars had expected to find. Dated to 1513 and signed by a Turkish admiral named Pirirace, this map would go on to stir fierce debates, inspire wild theories, and leave behind one enduring mystery. How did a 16th century sailor map parts of the world he shouldn't have known existed? The Pirirace Map is not a complete world map. It's just a section showing the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and something else at the bottom. That something else is where the real intrigue begins. It appears to be a depiction of the northern coastline of Antarctica, except Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, 3 centuries later, and even then its coast was hidden under thick layers of ice. Yet here, on this 1513 map, we have a shape strikingly similar to Queen Maud Land, an area of Antarctica that today lies buried beneath a continental ice sheet. How could Pirirace have drawn something like that? According to his own notes scribbled on the map, Pirirace didn't chart the entire thing himself. He compiled it from about 20 older maps, some from Portuguese and Arab sources, others far older, possibly from ancient times. He claimed that some of these maps dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, meaning they would have been over 1,800 years old by the time he used them. If that's true, the implications are staggering. In the 1960s, a US Air Force captain named Arlington Mallory analysed the map and argued that it matched the subglacial topography of Antarctica. In other words, it seemed to depict the landmass beneath the ice, not just its visible outline. Mallory's claim shocked many. How could any ancient civilization have mapped land that was supposedly ice-free thousands of years ago? This theory gave birth to an avalanche of ideas. Some believed the map was evidence of an advanced prehistoric civilization, possibly lost to time, Atlantis perhaps. Others argued that earlier seafarers had explored Antarctica long before its official discovery. There were even suggestions that ancient cultures had access to aerial or satellite technology, or had inherited knowledge from visitors beyond Earth. Of course, mainstream historians and cartographers are more cautious. Many argue that the map doesn't really depict Antarctica at all. Instead, they suggest it's just a distorted drawing of South America that curves unnaturally due to copying errors or lack of knowledge. In this view, what looks like Antarctica might simply be the southern tip of South America stretched too far. Still, some facts refuse to settle comfortably. For one, the level of accuracy in certain parts of the map, like the coastline of Brazil, is remarkable for its time. Remember, this was just 21 years after Columbus first reached the Americas. Yet the map shows parts of South America that European explorers supposedly hadn't charted yet. It also seems to use a projection method not officially developed until centuries later. Some experts believe the map employs a form of spherical trigonometry, suggesting that whoever made the original source maps understood Earth's curvature. Then there's the question of longitude. Determining longitude accurately was notoriously difficult before the invention of accurate timepieces in the 18th century. Yet the Pirirace Map seems to position land masses with a precision that shouldn't have been possible in 1513. Could ancient mariners have possessed techniques we've forgotten? Another strange detail lies in the orientation. Parts of the map are aligned differently from others, almost as if they were pasted together from various sources, each with its own perspective. This mosaic-like structure supports Pirirace's claim that he compiled the chart from multiple maps, but it also raises the question, who made those original maps? And how old were they? Even skeptics admit that the Pirirace Map is an anomaly. It doesn't fit neatly into the narrative of exploration we're taught. If taken at face value, it suggests that someone, at some point long before the modern era, had knowledge of the globe's true shape and distant coastlines far beyond what history records. The Ottomans, under whom Pirirace served, were fierce naval powers, and the admiral himself was an accomplished sailor. He later authored the Kitab al-Bahriyeh, a detailed book of navigation, so he was no amateur. But he never claimed to have discovered these lands himself. He gave credit to ancient sources, which have since disappeared. Some theorists speculate that these original maps might have come from the fabled Library of Alexandria, lost centuries earlier. If ancient explorers, Phoenicians, Egyptians, or unknown mariners, had circumnavigated the globe and recorded their findings, those records may have survived in secret libraries or... Deep in the frozen heart of Siberia lies Lake Baikal, the oldest and deepest freshwater lake on Earth. It holds 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water, more than all the Great Lakes combined. But it's not just the staggering depth or age of Baikal that mystifies explorers. Hidden beneath its icy surface are tales that sound more like science fiction than fact. One of the strangest, the mystery of the lost submarine of Lake Baikal. Unlike oceanic mysteries, this one is locked away in the middle of Russia. Surrounded by ancient forests and frozen mountains, the lake plunges to depths of over 5,300 feet, and much of it remains unexplored. For decades, fishermen, locals, and military personnel have spoken in hushed tones about strange sightings in the water, lights, moving objects, and even humanoid figures. But the most chilling story of all began during the Cold War, when Soviet forces conducted secret operations beneath the lake's surface. According to declassified Russian military reports and numerous whistleblower accounts, the Soviet Navy was interested in Lake Baikal not just as a training site, but as a location tied to unexplained underwater activity. Submarines were sent to patrol its depths. Some say it was a test ground. Others believe they were searching for something. Then, without warning, one of the subs vanished. The official explanation was sparse: technical failure. No bodies, no wreckage, and no signals were ever recovered. The lake, it seemed, had swallowed the vessel whole. That's not unheard of in ocean disasters, but Lake Baikal is an inland body of water. The pressure at the bottom is immense, but it's not the crushing weight of the Mariana Trench. Still, divers couldn't locate a trace, not even bubbles. The incident was quickly buried under layers of military silence, but rumours leaked. One recurring tale involves Soviet Navy divers in the 1980s who encountered something entirely unexpected at around 160 feet below the surface. They reported seeing gigantic humanoid figures clad in silvery suits moving with uncanny speed and ease underwater, without breathing equipment. The divers tried to capture one of these beings, but the attempt allegedly resulted in a violent reaction. A sudden pressure shift injured several divers and killed at least 3. The mission was terminated and further exploration was banned. Now, imagine this: a submarine diving to monitor strange activity, suddenly encountering something unknown, something not accounted for in any manual. If that's what happened, it could explain the complete disappearance. But if the submarine simply imploded or failed, why not recover its remains? In 2009, a new twist emerged. A Russian deep-water exploration team using MIR submersibles, yes, the same kind used to explore the Titanic, descended into Baikal's depths. They were conducting geological research, but the lead scientist claimed something unsettling. The equipment shut down temporarily, cameras blacked out, and the sub was briefly followed by an object that didn't match any known marine life or man-made machine. Of course, skeptics argue that all this is just Cold War folklore, a combination of secrecy, failed experiments, and imagination. Maybe the sub was lost due to human error. Maybe the divers mistook fish or light distortions for something more exotic. After all, strange sightings in deep water aren't unusual. Our brains don't process the underwater world the same way they do on land. But Lake Baikal isn't just any lake. It's a geological anomaly. It's a rift lake, formed by the Earth's crust pulling apart. It's home to species found nowhere else, some of them ancient. Its temperature gradients and magnetic anomalies have long puzzled scientists. There are even local legends, passed down throh Buryat shamans, that describe the lake as a living entity, or a gateway to other realms. Long before sonar and satellites, they told stories of spirits rising from the depths, of glowing eyes in the dark water. Could the lake be hiding more than natural secrets? Some theorists suggest that during the Cold War, the USSR was trying to harness whatever anomaly they believed lay beneath Lake Baikal, be it geological, alien, or even interdimensional. It sounds outlandish, but keep in mind, the Soviets were conducting experiments in psychic research, time manipulation, and other fringe sciences. If they thought something powerful was hidden under Baikal, sending a sub would have made perfect sense. In more recent years, satellite scans and sonar sweeps have revealed odd formations on the lake bed, rectangular ridges, dome-like structures, and deep fissures. Some researchers believe these might be natural rock formations, but others think they resemble man-made installations, long collapsed or buried under sediment. Could these be ancient bases, or remnants of some forgotten civilization? In 1932, two gold prospectors blasting through the thick rock of Wyoming's San Pedro Mountains stumbled upon a discovery that would baffle scientists, fuel legends, and ignite one of the strangest mysteries in American archaeology. Tucked inside a small hidden cave was a mummy, no more than 7 inches tall when seated, with leathery brown skin, a flattened skull, and fully formed features. This tiny being was no doll, no carving. It had flesh, bones, and even visible fingernails. What they had found became known as the San Pedro Mountains mummy. The body was unlike anything researchers had seen. It was in a seated position, arms crossed, face frozen in a grotesque grimace. Its mouth was wide open, revealing sharp teeth. The head appeared flattened, the eyes sunken. But perhaps most puzzling of all was its size. When measured, the mummy stood just about 14 inches tall if fully extended. It looked like a miniature adult, not a fetus or child, but a tiny human with adult proportions. That one detail launched decades of speculation. The mummy was quickly brought to Casper, Wyoming, and placed on display, drawing crowds and media attention. Scientists and doctors, including those from the American Museum of Natural History, examined it. X-rays revealed a full skeleton, including ribs, a spine, and even what appeared to be food in the stomach. Some believed it was an adult who had lived to around 65 years old, despite standing less than a foot tall. If true, this would challenge everything we thought we knew about human biology. The find instantly revived an old Native American legend. The Shoshone and Crow tribes had long told stories of a race of tiny people called the Nemerigar, diminutive, fierce warriors who lived in the mountains. According to lore, the Nemerigar were not friendly forest gnomes, but warlike and territorial. Some stories described them using poison arrows and attacking intruders. They were also said to kill their own if they became too old or sick to keep up with the group. For many locals, the San Pedro mummy was not just a relic, it was proof, but the academic world wasn't so quick to embrace this conclusion. Skeptics argued that the body was likely a child, possibly an infant with anencephaly, or another genetic disorder that caused abnormal growth and skull deformation. The open mouth and shrunken features, they said, could be explained by natural mummification and post-mortem drying. Others thought it might be a hoax, a carefully crafted dummy made to resemble a human. Still, the X-rays didn't lie. They showed bones, organs, and structures consistent with a biological organism. And importantly, the skeleton did not match a newborn's proportions. The skull was too large, the teeth too well formed, the limbs too complete. If it had been an infant, the evidence didn't fully support it. So what was it? Some theorists proposed it could be a member of an undiscovered humanoid species, a distant cousin of Homo sapiens that had adapted to live in isolation. Others speculated it could have been a case of primordial dwarfism, a condition causing extreme short stature. But that too was inconsistent with the mummy's preserved adult features. Then came the twist. The mummy disappeared. After years of private exhibitions and examinations, the San Pedro mummy vanished from public view. Some say it was last seen in the possession of a man named Ivan Goodman, who refused to hand it over to scientists. Others claim it was sold or stolen. Attempts to track it down led nowhere. Today, the only surviving pieces of evidence are photographs, X-rays, and written reports. The actual body, arguably one of the most mysterious ever found in North America, remains lost. With the mummy gone, researchers are divided. Some insist it was a hoax, bolstered by exaggeration and folklore. Others say the science doesn't add up for a fake, and the mummy deserves renewed investigation. Without the body, there's no way to apply modern DNA testing, carbon dating, or other forensic tools. The mystery is effectively frozen in time. Still, the story refuses to die. In the 2000s, another tiny mummy was found in Peru, reigniting interest in miniature human-like remains. That specimen was eventually declared to be a malformed fetus, but comparisons were immediately drawn to the San Pedro mummy. People began to wonder, could there really have been an ancient, now extinct race of little people? After all, other human relatives like Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, were discovered in Indonesia in 2003. These were adult humans who stood just over 3 feet tall and lived about 50,000 years ago. If such a species existed on one isolated island, could another version have once lived in the isolated canyons of the American West? On a cold February morning in 1855, the quiet county of Devon in southwest England awoke to something deeply unsettling. Fresh snow had fallen during the night, blanketing the landscape in pure white. But what people found when they opened their doors made their blood run colder than the winter air. Strange hoof-like footprints, narrow, cloven and oddly spaced, had appeared overnight, cutting a continuous path through villages, rooftops, rivers and fields. The trail stretched for over 100 miles, and it didn't stop for anything. The mysterious prints crossed high walls, went over houses, passed through drain pipes, and even appeared on narrow roofs where no person or animal could have walked. In some places, the footprints entered and exited tiny openings, far too small for a human or even livestock. Witnesses claimed the prints were roughly 4 inches long, 3 inches wide, and spaced around 8 inches apart, as if made by a bipedal creature walking with unnatural precision. What chilled everyone the most wasn't just their appearance, it was the implication. People soon whispered the same phrase across Devon's frozen fields. "The devil has walked through our land." The press quickly dubbed them the devil's footprints, and panic began to spread. Some villagers locked their doors and shuttered their windows, others gathered in churches to pray. Rumours grew wilder with each retelling, that the creature had wings, that it had climbed vertical walls, that it had passed through solid barriers. No one could explain how a single set of footprints could travel such an impossible distance in one night, over every kind of terrain. Theories began to swirl. One idea was that it had been a hoax, perhaps by someone dragging a carved hoof on a string. But how could a hoaxer have done that for miles through rough countryside, across frozen rivers, over tall fences, and even onto rooftops, in a single night, without leaving other tracks or evidence? That explanation fell apart quickly. Another theory involved escaped animals, like donkeys, goats, or kangaroos from a private menagerie. Yet no known animal left tracks in such a straight line, over such varied obstacles, and none walked like that, in a perfect single file, never breaking stride. Some thought it might be badgers or mice hopping through the snow, but again the pattern was too consistent, too linear, and stretched too far. A more chilling idea was that it was a bird or demon-like creature flying overhead and dropping down at intervals, touching the ground lightly before rising again. Some clergymen warned that it was a punishment from above. Others feared that a supernatural being had been released, perhaps summoned by occult activity. Sightings of shadowy figures and strange sounds were reported throughout the region in the following days, though none were confirmed. One of the most detailed contemporary accounts came from the Reverend H.T. Ellacombe, who collected letters and testimony from across Devon. According to reports, the trail ran from Exmouth to Topsham, then north to Dawlish and Teignmouth, covering over 100 locations. The prints never varied, never doubled back, and always followed the same eerie rhythm. Could it have been a case of mass hysteria? Perhaps, but the consistency of reports spread across such a wide area, with matching physical evidence in the snow, makes it more than just folklore. As the snow melted days later, the tracks disappeared, leaving no further clues. The incident was never repeated in such a dramatic form, though similar smaller-scale occurrences have been reported in other parts of the world. Strange hoofprints in snow or sand, unexplained trails that stop abruptly or climb impossible surfaces. Over the years, scientists, folklorists and skeptics have tried to make sense of what happened. Some now suggest rare meteorological events, like hail or snow interacting with melting ice, might have caused odd indentations. Others believe the story grew from multiple natural sources, different animal tracks mistaken as one, exaggerated by frightened villagers and repeated by newspapers hungry for sensation. But none of these theories fully explain the impossible precision, the vast distance, or the sheer eeriness of that cold February night. What makes the Devil's Footprint so haunting is not just the tracks themselves, but what they symbolize, that feeling of waking to something impossible, something unknown, written right across your backyard. It wasn't just a mystery, it was an intrusion, a violation of the normal world by something that shouldn't exist. The event remains one of the most enduring, unexplained mysteries in British history. Historians still pore over the Reverend's notes. Paranormal researchers still walk the paths, looking for signs. And storytellers still pass on the tale of the cloven hoofs that came in the dark and left without a sound. In 1558, a Venetian nobleman named Caterino Zeno published a manuscript that would spark centuries of debate. Titled Dei Commentari del Viaggio in Persia, the book unexpectedly included something else, a tale of two ancestors who, according to Caterino, had sailed far into the North Atlantic nearly 2 centuries earlier. These men, Niccolò and Antonio Zeno, were Venetian navigators who supposedly set off in the 1390s and wound up in unknown northern lands, encountering strange islands, powerful rulers, and perhaps even reaching parts of the New World, long before Columbus. According to the manuscript, the Zeno brothers were shipwrecked on a remote island, where they met a noble ruler named Zichmni, who welcomed them and later invited them to join him on expeditions. They accepted, and over the course of many years, they sailed with Zichmni through a chain of mysterious islands, some of which would appear in maps for centuries to come: Friesland, Icaria, Estotiland and Drogeo. These were not minor islets, but entire land masses, described in vivid detail. The most intriguing of them was Estotiland, a vast territory to the west of Greenland. The letters described it as fertile, wooded and rich in minerals. The inhabitants, according to the Zenos, were intelligent and cultured, speaking a language unknown to Europeans. This has led many to wonder, could Estotiland have been part of North America, described decades before Columbus set sail? Alongside the manuscript, Caterino Zeno also published the now famous Zeno Map, which included these strange islands. While some, like Freyland, are now considered fictitious, the map showed Greenland, Iceland and parts of Scandinavia with surprising accuracy. It was among the first maps to hint at lands far west of Europe, long before those territories appeared in official geography. But the authenticity of the Zeno narrative has been questioned from the start. For one, the original letters the story is based on have never been seen. Only Caterino's published version exists. There are no earlier records confirming the voyages. Some scholars believe Caterino may have invented or exaggerated the story, possibly to glorify his family's legacy during a time when Venice's power was declining. Others think he may have misinterpreted older sources, blending myth with fact in a well-intentioned but flawed historical account. Still, supporters of the narrative point to compelling clues. The accuracy of parts of the Zeno map, especially in depicting northern coastlines, suggests knowledge that was not common in the 14th century. Could the Zeno brothers have encountered Norse sailors who still remembered voyages to Vineland, known today as part of Newfoundland? Could they have compiled ancient knowledge that had survived only in oral form? One especially controversial theory identifies Zichmni with Henry Sinclair, a Scottish nobleman who some believe made secret voyages to North America in the late 14th century. Though evidence is scarce, some claim the Zenos joined Sinclair on a westward journey, reaching Nova Scotia or even further. If true, this would place Europeans in the Americas almost 100 years before Columbus. But the biggest problem remains the islands themselves. Friesland, prominently featured on the Zeno map, appeared on many European maps for the next 200 years, yet no such island exists. Some believe it was a mistaken double image of Iceland or a misinterpretation of fog-covered land seen at sea. Other islands, like Drogeo and Icaria, have also failed to match any real geography. Critics argue that the map's errors weaken the credibility of the entire account. Even so, the Zeno manuscript doesn't feel like pure fiction. The descriptions are too detailed, the structure too consistent. It reads like a travel journal, not a myth. And that's what makes it so compelling. It lives in the grey area between the real and the imagined. Could it be that a mix of truth and confusion, real voyages filtered through memory, second-hand reports or garbled translations, led to a tale that is both wildly inaccurate and possibly based on something real? That question remains unanswered. But one thing is certain. The voyages of Zeno continue to spark curiosity in historians, explorers, and alternative history researchers. The manuscript may be flawed, but it reflects something deeper, a longing to uncover what was lost, a suspicion that history is full of blind spots, and a reminder that some of the most fascinating questions still lie just off the edges of the map. In the quiet fields of Östergötland, Sweden, there stands a massive slab of stone. Weathered by time, yet still standing proud, this monument is no ordinary relic. It is the Runestone, one of the most puzzling inscriptions from the Viking world. Covered in mysterious symbols, over 700 runes across 5 sides, it holds the longest runic inscription known from the Viking Age. Carved around the year 800 AD by a man named Varin, the stone was meant to honour his deceased son, but it goes far beyond grief. The text is not a straightforward tribute. Instead, it reads like a cryptic puzzle, layered in mythology, riddles, ciphers, and fragmented stories. Some runes are written in reverse. Others follow unusual patterns or codes. This isn't just a eulogy, it's a carefully constructed message wrapped in mystery. For years, scholars believed the stone told tales of ancient kings, warriors, and mythical events. It references Theodoric the Great and mentions battles, deaths, and gods. Yet the logic of the text feels broken. Lines jump between unrelated ideas. Questions are asked but never answered. It's part inscription, part riddle. Some lines are especially strange. One asks, "Who was born before the sun?" Another says, "What creature never speaks, yet its voice is heard?" These riddles don't have obvious answers, but they hint at deep symbolic meaning, possibly rooted in Norse cosmology, the world of gods, giants, creation, and destruction. Then came a radical theory in 2019. Researchers suggested the runestone wasn't just about a dead sun or mythic kings. It may have been a response to a climate catastrophe that had struck centuries earlier. In the year 536 AD, a massive volcanic eruption darkened the skies across the northern hemisphere. Temperatures dropped, crops failed, people starved. Historical records from across Europe and Asia describe the sun vanishing behind a thick veil. This event caused years of hardship and left a scar on cultural memory. In Norse tradition, a harsh winter known as Fimbulwinter was said to come before Ragnarok, the end of the world. Scholars now believe the legend of Fimbulwinter may have been a memory of that ancient disaster. The runestone, carved generations later, may reflect that lingering fear, the fear that the sun could disappear again. This theory gives new meaning to the stone's riddles. Phrases about darkness, unspoken voices, and cycles of death might be poetic references to this climate trauma. If true, the runestone could be the world's oldest surviving monument to climate anxiety. Still, the mystery remains unsolved. Some experts argue the stone's text is a deeply personal mythic tribute. Others believe it was meant to preserve sacred knowledge in symbolic form. Some even think it was a coded initiation tool, meant only for those who understood Norse myth, poetry, and ritual. The complexity is staggering. It uses multiple writing techniques. Baustrophodon, alternating lines written left to right and right to left, reversed runes, cryptic grammar, and layered meanings. Decoding it requires knowledge of Old Norse, ancient poetry, symbolic logic, and more. It's not a book, it's a linguistic maze. Modern technology has helped reveal hidden details. Laser scanning has identified faint runes previously overlooked. AI is now being used to match patterns between this and other ancient texts. But even with new tools, the runestone remains elusive. Was it meant to warn of future catastrophe? Was it a poetic memorial to a beloved son? Or was it both, a father's grief carved through the lens of cultural fear and cosmic prophecy. We may never know for sure, but the stone still stands. It has weathered war, winter, and centuries of silence. It remains a timeless challenge, asking us to listen, to read between the lines, and to respect the mysteries left by those who came before us. The Runestone may not give up its full meaning, but perhaps that's the point. Some stories aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be remembered. In the rolling hills and deep forests of medieval Hungary, a legend once stirred that would leave Europe in awe and fear, the tale of the Black Army of Hungary. Part real, part myth, and cloaked in shadow. This mysterious military force appeared almost overnight, conquered with uncanny skill, and vanished just as quickly. What remained were echoes, rumours, and a sense that something unnatural had once marched across the heart of Europe. It all began with Matthias Corvinus, one of Hungary's greatest kings. Rising to the throne in 1458, Matthias wasn't born into power. He took it. And unlike other monarchs of his time, he wasn't content to depend on unruly nobles or borrowed troops. He envisioned a force that would be loyal only to him, one that could rival any army in Europe. From that vision, the Black Army was born. Unlike feudal levies or temporary militias, the Black Army was a permanent, professional military. It drew soldiers from across Europe, Bohemians, Poles, Germans, Serbs, and even some Turks. It included infantry, archers, handgunners, cavalry, and siege specialists. It was a modern army in a medieval world. Some said their armour was blackened with oil to prevent rust. Others claimed they wore no true uniforms, only dark cloaks and a grim expression of silence. Their tactics were fast, brutal, and clever. They used early firearms with deadly efficiency, employed ambushes and flanking manoeuvres, and moved with an organisation that left their enemies stunned. The Black Army won battles against larger, wealthier enemies. They fought the Holy Roman Empire, held off Ottoman advances, and even conquered parts of Austria. Some whispered they never slept, never bled, never lost. But as powerful as they were, the Black Army was tied to the fate of a single man, Matthias himself. When he died suddenly in 1490, everything unravelled. His death left no clear heir. The Hungarian nobility, eager to reclaim power, dismantled the very system Matthias had built. Taxes that funded the army vanished. Soldiers went unpaid. Loyalty gave way to survival. Once mighty warriors turned to banditry, attacking the very villages they once protected. In less than a decade, the most feared force in Central Europe had disintegrated into memory, and yet, some say they never truly disappeared. Whispers spread through Hungary and beyond. Peasants told stories of ghostly riders clad in black, galloping through morning mist. Merchants swore they heard drums and marching footsteps in forests where no men lived. On nights when thunder rumbled over the plains, some claimed to hear voices chanting in a language no longer spoken. They called it the Phantom Black Army. Folktales claimed these spectral soldiers would return when Hungary faced its darkest hour. Some said they had made a pact with supernatural powers to defend their homeland forever. Others believed they had been cursed, doomed to march eternally for a king who was no longer alive. In 1526, when Hungary suffered a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Mohacs against the Ottoman Empire, legend says shadowy troops were seen on the horizon, too late to help, but present all the same. During World War I and II, similar tales re-emerged. Were they hallucinations, folklore, or something more? Modern historians agree on certain facts. The Black Army was real, extraordinarily advanced, and shockingly effective. But its sudden end, and the speed at which its memory faded from records, is puzzling. Most mercenary armies dissolve over time. This one vanished with almost no trace. Could it be that their legacy lived on in stories because the truth felt incomplete? Some believe the Black Army's ghostly legend was shaped by the fear of chaos. Hungary had lost not just soldiers, but a rare moment of unity and strength. In remembering them as phantoms, people preserved the idea that something noble had once stood between them and the dark. Artifacts thought to belong to the Black Army have appeared in odd places. A sword bearing their crest was found in a Polish forest. Pieces of their distinctive armour have been recovered in battlefields far from Hungary. No one knows how they got there. But what we do know is this. The Black Army remains a rare historical case of a professional army ahead of its time, born in ambition, dissolved in politics, and transformed by legend. It is both a military achievement and a national myth. Even now, some say that on stormy nights in the Hungarian countryside, when the winds blow just right and the hills fall silent, you can still hear them. Boots striking the earth, the hooves pounding the mud, the creak of armour, the lost army, marching still, waiting for a king who will never return. In the shadowy corners of ancient history, some stories seem too strange to be real, yet too detailed to be ignored. One of the most curious is that of the Tuli Papyrus, a controversial document that some claim is the earliest written account of a UFO sighting, dating back over 3,000 years to the time of the ancient Egyptians. The story begins in the 1930s. Alberto Tuli, the director of the Vatican Museum's Egyptian section, was travelling through Cairo. In an antique shop, he came across a fascinating papyrus. The dealer told him it was a copy of an ancient record from the time of Pharaoh Thutmose III, who ruled around 1480 BC. However, the papyrus was too expensive, so Tuli made a copy of the text by hand. Years later, his handwritten version caught the attention of researchers. One of them, Boris Derashevils, translated the copied text, and the contents were shocking. The translation described a strange day in ancient Egypt when mysterious circles of fire were seen in the sky. The objects were bright, fast, and made no sound. According to the translation, they shined in the sky more brightly than the sun and moved with great speed, coming from all directions. The account claimed that these fiery discs appeared over several days. People were frightened. The pharaoh ordered his scribes to record everything. Animals became agitated. Priests were called to interpret the event, and offerings were made to the gods. Then, as suddenly as they had come, the flying circles rose higher into the sky and disappeared. It sounds almost like a scene from science fiction. But this wasn't a modern sighting. It was allegedly carved into papyrus thousands of years ago. For ancient alien theorists, the Tuli Papyrus became powerful evidence. If real, it would show that even the ancient Egyptians had witnessed unknown flying objects in their skies, long before planes, drones, or satellites ever existed. But here's the problem. The original papyrus has never been found again. Only the handwritten copy by Tuli exists, and the antique shop is gone. Tuli died in 1960. Leaving behind no verified photographs or full translations. The Vatican Museum has denied having the original, and the only known translation comes from researchers decades after the supposed discovery. This lack of physical evidence has fueled skepticism. Was the papyrus real, or did Tuli misinterpret another document? Some suggest he copied a religious or symbolic text and mistook it for something else. Ancient Egyptians often used poetic language. Could circles of fire simply describe the sun, comets, or solar flares? Skeptics also point out that many words in the translation do not align with standard Egyptian writing. Without the original, there's no way to verify the accuracy of Tuli's copy. It could have been altered, misunderstood, or even faked. However, others insist the description is too precise to dismiss. It doesn't read like myth. It describes multiple flying objects, coordinated movement, and reactions from animals and people. The discs appear, hover, and then rise into the sky. That doesn't sound like a meteor. And the event is treated seriously, offering sacrifices, seeking divine answers. This wasn't an everyday occurrence. If real, the papyrus might describe the earliest known encounter with flying technology, far beyond the reach of ancient humans. Could it have been an ancient comet cluster? A misunderstood astronomical event, or something else, something still unexplained? Despite the doubts, the Tuli Papyrus refuses to fade. It continues to appear in documentaries, UFO books, and mystery discussions. Even without the original, its story has sparked curiosity for decades. That alone speaks to the power of a single strange story, preserved only in memory, and passed from one curious mind to another. Whether hoax, misinterpretation, or real report, the Tuli Papyrus leaves a haunting question. If ancient civilizations saw things in the sky they couldn't explain, what did they really witness? Until the original papyrus is rediscovered, if it ever existed at all, the truth remains out of reach. But like the fire circles it describes, the mystery lingers in the sky, bright, silent, and beyond understanding. Beneath the charming cobblestone streets of Edinburgh, a different world lies hidden, a darker, older, and eerier world. One of tunnels, vaults, and forgotten passageways carved into the bedrock centuries ago. While tourists marvel at the towering castle and historic Royal Mile, few realise that under their feet is a maze of underground secrets, lost to time and only partially uncovered. These tunnels aren't just legends, they're real, and they have stories to tell. The most famous of them are the Edinburgh Vaults, a series of chambers hidden beneath South Bridge, constructed in the late 1700s. Originally, the vaults were built to serve as workshops and storage rooms for merchants, but they quickly took on a darker life. The stone leaked, mould crept in, sunlight never reached below, merchants moved out, and in came the desperate. By the early 1800s, the vaults had become home to the city's poorest, criminals and outcasts. The air was foul, the rooms were cold and damp, yet for many it was the only shelter they had. Rumours swirled of illegal activity, smuggling, gambling, black market trade. Some say even body snatchers used the tunnels to store stolen corpses meant for medical dissection. But that's only part of the mystery. Beneath Edinburgh's old town lies something even older, forgotten streets, buried under stone and history. The most famous example is Mary King's Close, a narrow alleyway that was once bustling with life. During a wave of urban construction, entire buildings were built right over it, sealing it underground. Legend says that during the plague, infected families were bricked up and left to die inside. While historians dispute the story, the place still feels heavy with sadness. In the modern era, these underground spaces were largely forgotten, until explorers began uncovering them again in the late 20th century. What they found shocked even seasoned historians. Sealed rooms, graffiti scratched into ancient walls, remnants of fires, lost tools, broken bottles, and sometimes nothing at all, but a deep, unshakable chill. Even stranger are the ghost stories tied to these tunnels. Visitors report hearing whispers in empty vaults, seeing shadowy figures dart through doorways and feeling cold hands brush their shoulders. Some claim to have seen a faceless man roaming the darker corners. Others speak of a child's voice calling from behind walls. Paranormal investigators have spent nights recording strange sounds and temperature drops with no clear explanation. Skeptics suggest these sensations come from the tunnel's oppressive atmosphere, low ceilings, stale air, and a long history of suffering. But even they admit, something about the Edinburgh tunnels feels off, and the mystery deepens. In recent years, researchers have discovered even deeper layers of tunnels, some of which do not appear on any map. Were they escape routes, secret meeting places, hidden chambers for rituals? Some are blocked off, others remain unexplored. Rumours speak of entire stretches of city, rooms, staircases and corridors, buried so deep they've been untouched for centuries. What were they used for? No one knows for sure. Some believe the tunnels connected noble homes, allowing quiet movement beneath the city during times of political unrest. Others suggest they were carved by monks, long before modern Edinburgh existed. A few even whisper of occult gatherings or secret societies using the darkness below to conduct forbidden ceremonies. Despite years of study, the full map of Edinburgh's underground is still incomplete. Some areas are too dangerous to explore, others are privately owned or protected. Every now and then, construction workers accidentally uncover a forgotten tunnel, and suddenly another piece of the puzzle appears. What's certain is that Edinburgh was built on layers, not just of stone, but of stories. Above ground, the city tells one tale, of kings, scholars, poets, and revolutionaries. But below, a different tale lingers, one of the poor, the hidden, the criminal, and the lost. a tale of survival in the shadows. So, the next time you walk through Edinburgh's old streets, pause for a moment. Listen. Feel the ground beneath your feet. You may be standing above a place no one has stepped in for hundreds of years. A tunnel that holds secrets. A vault that remembers sorrow. A passage to a past that refuses to stay buried. Because beneath the lights and laughter of the modern city lies something older, and it's waiting to be remembered. In a quiet village in northern Italy, whispers tell of an object so cursed that it was said to bring death to anyone who touched it. Not a weapon, not a relic of war, just a silver vase, polished, elegant, and deadly. They call it the Basano Vase, and for centuries its legend has lingered like a shadow. The story begins in the 15th century in a small town near Naples. According to legend, the vase was a wedding gift given to a young woman of noble birth. She was beautiful, well-educated, and deeply loved by her family. The wedding was to be a grand affair, but on the eve of the ceremony, tragedy struck. The bride was found dead in her room, still clutching the silver vase in her hands. No wound, no illness, just sudden, unexplained death. Before her burial, her family, devastated and confused, locked the vase away, hiding it deep in their home, away from sight. And for a time the vase vanished from history, but centuries later it resurfaced. No one knows exactly when, but by the 1800s the Basano Vase had begun to pass from owner to owner again. Each time it brought with it a trail of sudden deaths. A young man who received it reportedly died just a few days later. A local doctor who acquired it as a gift soon fell ill and never recovered. A wealthy family in southern Italy bought the vase to display in their home. Within months, 3 members of the household had died unexpectedly. The pattern was hard to ignore, and yet the vase itself remained untouched by time. It didn't decay, didn't tarnish, didn't show signs of wear. Just smooth silver, etched with strange markings, symbols that no one could explain. Some said they resembled early alchemical signs. Others thought they were a family crest or initials long lost to time. But no record of the vase's true origin was ever found. As fear grew, so did the attempts to rid the world of the object. Some tried to bury it, others threw it in rivers. But somehow, the vase always returned, either dug up by accident or purchased unknowingly from a dealer who knew nothing of its curse. By the 20th century, the Basano vase had become something of a legend in Italy. Superstitious families refused to keep it in their homes. It was said that by simply touching it, a person could be marked for death. Some say it was passed between owners with a chilling note, "Beware, this vase brings death." One of the most famous accounts tells of a man who dared to sell the vase at an auction. Despite the rumours, a collector purchased it. He reportedly died within 3 months. The auction house, alarmed by the string of tragedies, refused to handle it again. Stories spread that the vase was eventually sealed in a lead box and buried in an undisclosed location, perhaps even under the foundations of a building. Some claim it was hidden in a churchyard. Others say the police themselves buried it, refusing to document the location out of fear. And today, no one knows exactly where the Basano vase is. Some say it still lies beneath a certain building in Italy untouched and waiting. Others believe it was destroyed, melted down in secret to erase its curse, but no official record confirms this. The vase simply vanished. Of course, skeptics argue that the whole story is exaggerated. There are no verified death records directly linked to the vase. Much of the story is passed down through word of mouth, fueled by superstition. The deaths could have been coincidence, the legend, just folklore. But here's the strange part. No museum has ever claimed to possess the vase. No auction house lists it in their historical sales. No photos exist of it today. For such a harmless object, the world has gone to great lengths to keep it hidden, and that's what keeps the legend alive. In a world where cursed items often appear in movies and myths, the Basano vase stands apart. It has no monsters, no rituals, no ancient inscription promising doom. It is ordinary, beautiful, simple. And yet, its presence is said to drain life from those who admire it too closely. Whether a genuine cursed artifact or a centuries-old morality tale about greed, curiosity, or meddling with the unknown, the Basano Vase continues to haunt the edges of historical mystery, because somewhere, perhaps buried beneath a city street, hidden in a sealed box or locked away in a dusty attic, the vase may still exist, waiting. In the summer of 1908, on the Greek island of Crete, inside the ancient Minoan palace of Festos, archaeologist Luigi Pernier unearthed something that would baffle the world for over a century. A clay disc, just 15 centimeters wide, covered in strange, spiraling symbols unlike anything ever seen before. That disc, now known as the Festos Disc, remains one of the greatest unsolved puzzles of the ancient world. At first glance, the disc seems simple: flat, circular, and sun-baked, but a closer look reveals something extraordinary. Both sides are filled with symbols stamped in a perfect spiral, moving from the edge to the center. There are exactly 241 figures, grouped into 45 distinct symbols. These include human figures, birds, boats, tools, and geometric patterns. But what stands out is how the symbols were made, not carved or painted, but pressed into the clay with stamps, making this possibly the earliest known example of movable type printing, centuries before Gutenberg's press. That detail alone is astonishing, but it's the content of the disc that has kept researchers up at night. What does it say? What language is it in? Is it a religious text? A poem? A spell? No one knows. Despite decades of study, the Festos Disc has never been definitively translated. The Minoans, who lived on Crete around 1700 BC, left behind other forms of writing, such as Linear A, which also remains undeciphered. But the symbols on the disc don't match Linear A or Linear B, the later script used for Mycenaean Greek. This makes the disc a linguistic orphan. It doesn't seem to belong to any known writing system of the ancient world. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some believe the disc is a hymn or prayer, perhaps to a goddess, based on repeated symbols that may suggest poetic or religious structure. Others think it could be a game board, a kind of ancient puzzle. One theory proposes it's a list of soldiers or slaves, a bureaucratic inventory. Still others have claimed it encodes a mathematical riddle, a calendar, or even a message from aliens. Yes, really. In the 1970s and 80s, scholars used early computers to analyze symbol frequency and pattern repetition. While this revealed some regular structure, like recurring symbol clusters, it still gave no concrete translation. Without other texts written in the same script, there's nothing to compare it to, making decipherment nearly impossible. And yet, some researchers claim they've cracked it. One proposed translation suggested the disc is a Minoan birth ritual chant. Another says it's a warrior's prayer. But none of these translations have been widely accepted, largely because they rely on too much guesswork and too few facts. No one can even say what language the disc was meant to represent. Was it a lost Minoan tongue? Something imported from a distant land? Or even a symbolic system that doesn't represent speech at all? Adding to the mystery is the fact that the Festos Disc is completely unique. No other artifact like it has ever been found, not even fragments. If it was part of a writing tradition, where are the other examples? Did the disc survive by accident? Was it ceremonial, intended for one-time use? Or was it so rare that only a handful ever existed? Some skeptics have even questioned whether it's real. A few scholars once speculated it might be a modern forgery, made by someone trying to create an archaeological sensation, but most experts agree it's genuine. Its discovery, material, and context all support its authenticity. Still, its uniqueness makes it feel almost unreal, like something that doesn't quite belong in the timeline of history. Perhaps that's what makes the Festos Disc so fascinating. It sits at the intersection of what we know and what we've lost. A relic from a civilization advanced enough to build palaces, create art, and invent a form of printing, but mysterious enough to leave behind no explanation. Today, the disc is on display at the Heraclean Archaeological Museum in Crete. Tourists and scholars alike stand before it, staring into its spiral of symbols, hoping to glimpse some hidden meaning. but the disc remains silent. Its symbols, carefully arranged by ancient hands, still wait to be understood. Maybe someday, someone will find a second disc, or a Rosetta Stone-style artifact that unlocks its code. Maybe the answers lie in a Minoan tomb yet to be opened, or a sunken archive beneath the sea. Or maybe it was always meant to be a mystery. Whatever its purpose, the Festos Disc endures, not just as a piece of clay, but as a symbol of how much we still don't know. In a world where we crave answers, it reminds us that the past still holds secrets, and that some of the most powerful messages are the ones we haven't yet learned to read.